Okay, great. You're doing it from there. Look how spiffy you are. So thanks for coming tonight. I'm Hartleburg Fondren. I'm Glenn and I am founder, school leader, and I am so appreciative that you're here to want to get more involved in the school. And some of you are like, yeah, I just want to see my child through the window and everything yet. And maybe you'll still leave that feeling that way. Or you might leave saying like, you know, maybe you're going to lean in a little bit more. So that's our time together to do this, to learn more about the school and the philosophy so that you can best integrate in and see how it's all going to work out for you and your family. So, thank you. I'd like to start with trying to see kind of who's in the room. Early ed families, 6 to 9. Okay. 9 to 12. Great. 12 to 14. 14 to 18. Did you notice what happened there? So that means some of you early ed folks who are on a similar developmental track as the teens get to come and sub in the teens program, which is so fun. And some of you that have done that, I hope that you will say how much fun it is, because it is. And some subs actually say it's kind of boring. It's not, because there's not a whole lot to do. Do you want to say that? The older kids are easy. They're easy, they just sit there. You could so say that, yeah. And you're going to say the same thing. Yeah, they're just easy. So, anyway, thank you. Let's see. Tracy, you haven't introduced yourself. Sorry.
Oh, hi. No, I am Tracy Pickman-Yates. I am in Sycamore in the woods, the boring part of Scope. And I'm also the sub coordinator for the school, so I'll be the person if you choose to sub. They'll be reaching out to you to get that going. So, also, I just want to mention there is a clipboard going around. I'm signing in. That's just so we know who's on here.
You put it in your volunteer time, and then there's also a page. We already given the page they fill out. Okay. You can go ahead and give them out if you want to, because some people will have to leave early, and that way you'll, as you're talking, as we're talking, you can say like what you might want to do. Like if you can only sub on Mondays, or if you'd really like to be in this part of the level, and if you need pens and pencils.
Yeah, those as well. You can pass those around. I put them on both sides.
So, what'd you say? If you both want to sub, you still have to. Yep. Perfect. So come on in. I know there's some more seats if you want to move. People can kind of scoot around, let people get up in the Coliseum. So thanks for moving around. This is just such a better space than going to the great big casa. It just feels like we're so far away. So thank you. All right. Keep us going, Tracy. I don't think we have any others. Yeah, you bet Kelly. Kelly, you want to introduce yourself?
Once you fill out those forms today, I'll be running all those background checks. So, phone, to attendance, office enrollment, all the good stuff.
So when we get to a page like this, if anyone's so courageous might want to read it for us, so I'm not the only one, and Tracy's not the one who's talking tonight. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Changing the paradigm of the way most of us we were in school and what was expected by teachers being conscious of what we teach.
Yeah. So many of us have had similar experiences, right? Like when we went to school, it probably didn't look like this. It probably didn't feel like this, right? And yet, here you're trying to go into a place, and it's like being a parent. We're always like, I will never be like my mother. And then what do we do, right? What did you say?
You're like your mother.
Yes, I know. And you're like saying the things you swore you would never say, And some of it was really beautiful and great. And same thing, you'll come in here and we just want to help you be successful, and we want to help the studios get the support that they need. And so we love that part. And then, so we talk about kind of the preparation of the adult. You want to take it? You want to talk about the preparation of the adult? You've been here how long, Tracy? 72 years? I remember standing at the window when your oldest was an early one, or your youngest?
Never left. That's what happened.
We kept pulling her in different directions.
Yeah. So, preparation of the adult. I mean, this is something that is really important, to ground ourselves before we interact with the learners who are going to be in the room and other people, right? So we have lots of things going on in our lives, and I don't know about you, but even though my baby just graduated last year, so this is the first time in 20 years I haven't had a learner in this building. It feels a little strange, but mornings are still a little chaotic in my house, regardless of what the age. And so I don't know if that ever happened to you. But yeah, so when you get here, being able to kind of just spiritually prepare yourself, right? So we need to be ready and engaged to be with the learners and meet them where they are and not carry our stuff with us into that room, because I don't know if you've ever felt the energy of somebody who's going through something or has had, some chaotic morning. It affects you, and so we want to make sure we come in ready for them.
Anybody want to read this quote by Dr. Montessori?
Sure. The child builds his inmost self out of deeply held impressions he receives.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure, huh? You're all like, let me think about how did I do today, right? Yeah, I mean, when we think about like everything, Marie Montessori said even a smile can upend the concentration of a child. That doesn't mean we don't smile at children. We do lots of smiling here and laughter. But also we're just real conscious and thoughtful about like where they are in their space. Like we're not trying to take the stage, right? We're just trying to be a part of it. And actually, and I know this conversation is going to continue, but some of our colleagues just were starting to have a conversation like, why are we called teachers? Why aren't we called guides? At some Montessori schools, teachers are called guides because that's really more of what we do, right? That doesn't mean that we're not teaching. It just means that it's less about us like filling the vessel, which is kind of that traditional model that came from the industrialization. Come on in, there's plenty of room. People can scoot around, you can jump on up and go up to the top if you want. So you're welcome to come in. And then, at the same time, we're really trying to be thoughtful about, how our body and how our feelings affect the young people around us. So, yeah. And you can tell, like, you can see Carrie, one of the teachers in early ed, like, we all want to, like, help it or fix it or do it, right? And she's just holding, right? She's waiting. And that was probably for me the hardest part of transitioning to a Montessori person. Tracy, was that hard for you?
I went to a Montessori school.
Yeah.
But no, it is. Even just as a parent, right? Like just being able to let things happen and just observe, and then let them, if they need support, they'll come to you.
That's a nuance of support, right?
Right, yeah.
Anybody else do this one?
We must help the child to act for himself, will for himself, think for himself. This is the art of those who aspire to serve the Spirit.
Any thoughts about that? Does that mean we let them do whatever they want whenever they want? We super know, Sarah said.
Yeah, it allows them to make a decision. So it could be a better decision or it could be maybe a bad decision, but it leaves it up to them to make their decision, and of course there would be consequences.
And sometimes we really like those consequences.
Right.
And sometimes we don't.
And if it's a good or bad consequence, you should learn.
You always
If it's a bad
learn.
consequence, you learn to not do that again.
Yeah.
If it's a good consequence, you know you do it again.
And so we just get the feedback from the environment. And if we allow that young person to kind of work through that, and that doesn't ever mean that we don't like challenge a decision or have a firm conversation. But it's really not your role in being in the building. That's our role, you know, like we get to be that person and you get to be the smiley, like, let's go ask Tracy, you know, and then you walk away. Tracy can have the harder conversation. But for us, we're oftentimes, you know, knowing that child for usually a longer period of time, they're in the same environment for 2, 3, 4 years at a time, so we get to kind of know them. And we know, like, is this really their best work? You know, was there something else going on when they did this or made this decision, and how do we help them to, like, come out in a positive way on the other side instead of trying to, like, go what rules to them. You know, I'm always surprised, honestly, when I see Clint or Tracy or Michael or any of the staff in the building, like, just handle something. I'm like, wow, that was like art, you know, like watching them go through that process. The air just went off. That's why it sounded like that. Do you mind turning, Kate, can you turn that air on behind you there? Do you mind turning that one on? If you just hit the up arrow, it'll come on for like an hour, hour and a half. Yeah, maybe the other side. Oh, no, you're right. That's it. Yep, press it again. Oh, press the other side. I was wrong. Sorry. There you go. Just turn it on for like an hour and a half. Yeah. Thank you. And so, you know, just trying to see these kiddos working here. And maybe this child is like, no, this one's supposed to go first, or this one, but just like, you know, even helping them to just be present in the situation. Many of us, I'm guessing in the room, all grew up like it's right or it's wrong. It's black or it's white, right? And, you know, I was having this in-depth conversation with my youngest daughter, Casey, who graduated in 2014, and she started PA school this summer. And she said, you know what's so surprising to me? Like, every one of our courses starts with, we work in the gray. Isn't that interesting? When you think of doctors and medical, do you think of gray or do you think of black and white? Black and white, right? And it's wrong, right? Because they don't know all of these things, but we've been conditioned to think that. And the same thing with any of this. Like, sometimes when we ask a child, you know, like they finish something like, oh, you put all these numbers together from 1 to 100. How do you feel about that? I thought it was confusing. And you're like, okay, that wasn't what I expected. What was confusing? I thought the 10s should be here, but the 10s ended up being over there. I have to go 10, 20, 30 over here, but I thought it was going to be over here. And I'm like, huh, is there a way we could create the 100 board to make the 10s there? You know, and so that just, there's no right or wrong, right? Like, it doesn't really matter. And maybe they would, and they would like put it off the board and, you know, make it shorter, and it still could work that way, right? So just being open to whatever direction they're going with that, for sure. Other thoughts that anyone have? This is your time too. So if something doesn't make sense, or you're like, oh, this is ridiculous, what do you do about this then? All right, let's keep going, Tracy. Let's see where we get. Oh, you already did. Anybody feel so moved?
The mind takes some time to develop interest, to be set in motion, to get warmed up into the subject, to obtain a state of profitable work. If at this time there's an interruption, not only is a period of profitable work lost, but the interruption produces an unpleasant sensation which is identical to fatigue.
Any adults have that attitude before? Anybody want to share?
It's like a transition period between going from getting work to getting home, or you're about to get something done in your house, like that 5, 10, 15 minutes where you take, get geared up to do it. You know, you saw all of a sudden they're extremely good, they've got an issue, and it's like, now I want to do the
That's
thing I gotta do.
You're gone, you know, and then there it sits 3 months later, right? Partially finished. And the same thing for children. We're like, oh, look at them. I've never seen them like build Legos in their room by themselves. Like, this is so cool. I'm like, what are you building? And then all of a sudden it just falters, and they're like on you, and they're like, when's dinner? Can I watch a show? And you're like, what happened? I just interrupted that part, right? And that doesn't mean we're perfect at that, but it is something we're really conscious about, because when we really let them, like, the day is theirs, the room is theirs, the materials are theirs, and we come in with that mindset, we're less likely to get, you know, in the middle of it, you know, or interrupt it. So we really try to be thoughtful. Did you want to share anything else about that?
I just think it's really important as the adults in the room to think of ourselves as resources. We are part of the environment. Like you said, we're not the sage on the stage. We are part of the environment. And so being aware of that is just, it's really important. Thinking about it a little bit differently.
And even at the teens program, like their concentration might look different, right? And they may not be as moving around, but they're still having concentration. And you might notice that you're getting some vibes that don't feel real good from a teen because you're kind of, doing this. And Tracy or an adult might say, like, you might just want to stay a little further off, right? And it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong, but we're just recognizing with you that might make that person feel uncomfortable. Just like if someone came up to us. We were finishing a grant this week, and the energy of the cupola was like, oh, and we were working through it, and I'm looking with Craig, and I'm like, okay, how about if we change this and this? And I said, would you like me to go take a break while you work on this? And she said, yes, I would. So, it's like thinking about our presence, even if we're trying to be helpful or not trying to interrupt, like just our presence could be a problem. So there were some papers out there. Some of you might have got different papers, like there's a communication tense handout. The biggest question we get is like, I'm a good job person. You think they'll even let me into sub? We're like, we'll help, like most of us, that's the way we grew up. Like we didn't grow up in an intrinsically motivated culture. And so, we'll help with that. And one of the first things we do with new coworkers is you can say, good golly, thanks for showing me that, right? And so if you feel like you're going to say good job or start to give a bunch of praise or you feel like you have to fill in a word here for this conversation, good golly's a word that can come out, or gracious, or, thank you for sharing. And parents sometimes will say like, what's the big deal? Why not just say good job? Any thoughts in the group? Yeah.
Leads them to seeking approval versus them having satisfaction on their own.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just think about how if they can feel that own sense of satisfaction, and we've all been there, right? Like we went too far and all of a sudden, well, how about this picture? What about this thing? Look, I did all this, and you're like, what have I done? I've probably gone too far. And so instead, we just try to be present with them. If they're excited, I'm excited. I'm going to mirror what I see instead of trying to be the one that puts the gold star on it in whatever form that takes, right? And so instead, if they're showing me this golden bead layout of 45, and they're doing up to 9,000 cubes, and they're like, oh, I'm like, whew, 9,000 is so tall, and they're like, it's the tallest, and I put all of them down, and you put all of them down, you used all the beads in this whole job. And they're like, I used all, and so we're like in it together, and I'm not taking that from them, or I'm not saying, look at everybody, how nicely Tracy's sitting now that she's done the 45 bead layout, right? Now, Tracy, if she's more of a cat person, it's probably like, I don't like to have all the attention on me, right? Like she's feeling uncomfortable, and maybe if she's, 10, 12, 14, she's also feeling embarrassed, like all those different things. So instead, we just want to be, present with them. We only talk so hopefully the person that we're talking to can hear. We're not trying to talk so the whole room can hear. I was given a tour to an applicant this week for something else, and she was saying, do they ever do anything at the same time? I said, we were mostly down that in the building, like, no, not really. She goes, how do they do that? Like, how do they? I'm like, yeah, I know, but what have you seen? She goes, I mean, it all looks like it's this beautifully escaped environment, like they all know what they're supposed to be doing. I'm like, yeah, we don't see that completely, but yes, I hear what you're saying. It's like beginning of week 3, but anyway, it was just so interesting because they don't, and we're not trying to get them to like all acclimate to doing like a thing together. We're just trying to help them create the best version of themselves, to understand, what their work is, like what is hard, what is easy, all those things. For some of us, we didn't kind of work through, or maybe you're still working through, but until we were in our 20s or 30s, right? And we're trying to help young people at the age of 5, 7, 9, 15, etc., right? Do you want to add anything else to that?
I just think when you say good job, and I know we're always trying to be, when you say that, you're trying to give them, you're proud of them or whatever. But it almost feels dismissive. Like if you've ever, heard somebody say I'm sorry so many times, and you're like, why? Like, so I think my go-to is asking questions. I know you gave like they use the same letters, but that way, because we're just trying to show interest. Like we are interested in what you're doing. We're, that. So asking questions about it is always my go-to, so that I can keep that, going. I can give them, I guess, the feedback that they're wanting. They want me to be interested. They want me to see what they're doing, and that just shows that you are seeing it, right? Like if you're saying, "Wow, look at all the colors you used. How many did you use?" Then it's more, I don't know, it's more conversation.
Because I have a habit of just saying sorry.
Oh,
That was an example.
yeah.
It's just it feels dismissive sometimes if you just say that over and over.
Yeah.
I was going to share that I taught preschool for 9 years, and I've had to do a lot of unlearning of those habits, because we even did an entire conference on 1,000 ways to praise.
Sure.
And it was all the good jobs and attaboys and attagirls and all, like, really a broad conference on that whole topic. And so it was kind of like the whole way in those years. And so we've been here, he's in 8th grade now, we started in 5th, and that is still like an ongoing process for me to
I get that.
putting it into practice regularly.
Yeah. Have you noticed early childhood education in general shifting some from that over the years?
Yes, I went back to school. I'm in now at U of L, and one of the classes I took last semester was on emerging curriculum, and it was all about, thinking through these newer philosophies, and also, of course, Montessori was a big point of subject there. So I'm learning that they're going away from that, which is nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
follow the science.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on feedback? Like, I like how you did blah, blah, blah. I love that you did X, Y, Z. I find myself often doing that with my kids, just to show them interest in things. Or do you think that also still sets a false expectation or goalpost for them to try to meet?
Yeah, I think, we probably would more likely use a phrase like, oh, I see how you did that, Like, what made you choose that instead of this? Kind of the questioning part that Tracy said.
I saw the questions.
Yeah, because we want them to be more introspective than we are, like, waiting for us to say something, right? And so sometimes those comments that you're sharing will get them to, like, keep coming back to the adult. And, that behavior mod does that, right? And so for our point of view, we want to try to get them to look at it themselves. So eventually, they'll say something like, this part was really hard, but this part was much easier. Like they start giving that back to you even before you're doing it. Like we're not trying to, and I know you probably weren't thinking this when Tracy was saying that, we're not trying to ask them questions like that puts them on the spot. In a few months, we have child's work night, and we're trying to help parents, like, don't say, well, what is 7 plus 92? And you're like, oh my gosh, like, they may not be ready for that yet. So we try to only ask them, and there's a whole conversation we have about first, second, and third period lessons. But a first period lesson is really when you're just saying, like, this is the 100 board, this is how this activity works. And the second period is when they start to practice with it. And when they first start practicing with the numbers might not all be in order, and I don't care about that. They're not memorizing the order they put it in. How many people felt uncomfortable when I just said that? The school leader that said, I don't care about that, because I'm looking at it from development, not from like forever. You know what I'm saying? Like just because they messed up the 20s and the 30s, they're probably not going to be doing that 3 months from now or 6 months from now because I could see that. And now I can isolate that in its own lesson, you know, when it's appropriate and when it's contextual and interesting to them, hopefully. But then when I come back to this, and when I say, when you get to 20, come to me and let's talk first, right? And so they're like, all right, I'm at 20. And they put 30 there. And I'm like, okay. So let's go get the 100 board and figure out what number, let's go get the paper and let's figure out what number came first last time. Well, it says a different number than when I put down. Oh, okay, so which number is it? You know what? We did the 10s and 20s the other day. I remember 10, 20. This is 20. I wanted 30. 30's next, so I've got to finish the 20s. I'm like, oh, okay. Thanks for sharing. Off I go, right? Now, how much longer are they going to remember that? Right? And then if not, they're like, oh, I've got to write. We were supporting this young person today that was in a loop, and they just couldn't get out of it because they were convinced the teacher was telling them to rewrite this whole thing that they did, which they weren't. They were saying, like, thank you for writing on this. Now we've been working on 3 things. We've been working on putting, you know, your S's in lowercase instead of uppercase, and we've been doing this and that. So go and see if there's any S's that you want to make an adjustment on and rewrite those words. And this child, just for whatever reason, right, was looping on, they have to rewrite the whole thing. And so we would rather make it contextual to something they already know instead of fixing, you know, here are the mistakes, fix these mistakes. Now perfunctorily, English teacher, I give this back to you, right? And you say, yes, it's right. I learned nothing because I just did what you told me to do and I didn't have any agency with it. But if I knew I was doing this and I was working on periods and I was working on proper pronouns and the adult that's guiding me said, okay, you did all of this work, now go check 3 things that we've been working on. Now, it's in my court, right? And then come back and show me the 3 things you found, you know? Or how many things you found, you know, like, I found 7 things. You found 7 things, look at you, you know? It's not about what was wrong, it's more about just the process of learning. Whew, that was a lot. Thoughts, comments, concerns, yeah, go ahead.
It's mostly a thing, especially with younger children, so that helping them find validation through themselves instead of asking another person to help.
Thank you. Yeah. So important, right?
And about confidence, right?
Builds confidence. Right. And some people say, but like, don't they have to learn? Are we giving out those medals to all of them? Go ahead.
Well, it reminds me of the saying, like, you can give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, and teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. Teach a child to learn, you can learn forever. Right. Just teach them how to find that specific answer for that one thing. That can show them that one thing.
Right. And how many of us in the room think in 5 years learning is going to look completely different with AI? I mean, we might be having a very different conversation, right? And we have AI in the school, and I'm not going to get into all of that today, but we do it in a certain way, and it's curated, and it's purposeful, and it's more Socratic, it's not tutorish, you know. It's really thoughtful, like why we're doing it, and when, and how to use it. And so it's really, you know, if we can help young people to use the tools that are out there for good, and for learning and for long term instead of like short term check off, I'm done, you know, it's a process. Helping versus hindering. Anybody have an example of that you think would be helpful for us to think about?
Assisting your learner to the point where you want to take some of the onus of the task away from them.
Yeah. Yeah. Any examples you're thinking of?
Oh, I mean,
Thousands.
yeah.
Shoes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lunches. Absolutely. Yeah.
Picking up messes.
Yeah. Right. You know, and sometimes we'll go too far, and sometimes we don't go far enough, right? Like sometimes they need that, what I talked about earlier, that first period lesson. okay, this is too much information, but just bear with me for just a second. But I'm supporting my 3-year-old who was on the toilet and has been in the nursery for 2 years, and she just moved down to early ed. And she was doing her wiping, and I was just, I mean, I'm just like blown over about the amount of meticulous care she's doing in this process. Like, I never did that for my own children. I didn't even think about all those processes. But at the nursery, and even at early ed as it moves down, like, they give them such like how to hold the toilet tissue, where to wipe, how to look, you know. It was just like, oh my gosh. Like, she's learned all those pieces of that, and she could be successful. When we just tell a child, wipe, and then we go, let me look, I gotta wipe again, right? Like, we're just telling them they can't do it, and we're not giving them the tools that they need in the first place, right? So it's just, I know that was really graphic, and I'm sorry, but it was the best thing I could think of right now, because it's something that's so natural, and that children don't always get the tools to know how to do independently, right? But if we don't give enough of that, we're hindering. If we give them too much, we're hindering, right? So that balance piece. What about observing versus staring? Why do we have that on there? Yeah, go ahead.
Because there are some kids that get really like timid or shy when you're constantly staring, and you may think you're observing them, but they can feel bad.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And or they're just like come over and like, who are you? You know, like they stop everything. Yeah, so it's just being aware of our own body, even like our clothing, our perfumes, our shoes, really all of those things. Anyone have a thought why? Distraction. Yeah. What did you say?
Just want to blend in.
Yeah, want to blend in. Clomp, 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 yeah.
For me, it's the perfumes.
Perfumes, yeah.
It doesn't matter where I go personally. Somebody has too much perfume, cologne, whatever. I'm immediately like,
Essential
what
oils
is that?
even, yeah.
So for kids, the same. They pick up on the smell and they're like, ooh, that smells good, or that's gross.
Yeah.
So it turns them away from what they're doing.
Right, right. Yeah. What about talking versus nagging? Anyone have a good balance of that with your own children?
No, I think I talk, but he says I nag,
Oh.
so I haven't mastered it yet.
Yeah, you're still working on that. Any tricks that anyone wants to share that they've figured out? Yeah.
I have 2 kids, and my oldest is 16, and so when certain expectations are not met in the household, so rather than going, oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, I've had to learn to be like, okay, this didn't get done. What was the hindrance? How can we work through this? What will help us work better? And then move through that. And so we came to, it helps me when I have it written. It helps me if you send me a text. And so we talked through it, and now we are moving past the barrier.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right, and it was a partnership, right?
Yeah.
It's collaboration, yeah. And sometimes you'll see that in these studios. There'll be like what we call a third point, you know, a paper that we've written together that we've agreed upon. And if you're in there, you might see like, we have this one paper that shows if a child's frustrated, the 3 things that they could do. Oh, do y'all know this yet? Talk. So if they're frustrated, if I'm frustrated with Tracy, I could say like, I don't want you to take my pencil. Or I could walk away and let it go, right? Walk away means let it go. It doesn't mean 10 minutes later I'm still angry about it, right? If I can't walk away, third option is get an adult for help, right? And so we don't say, oh, did you do the first 2? We just take the child where they are and figure out what's next for them. But like, you know, sometimes we will have that paper and say, you know, so wait, hold on, I hear you. I want to help you. You are angry. I hear you. You do not like what Tracy just did with your pencil. And I want to help. But first, can we just look at this together and figure out where you're going to start? Oh, I forgot to tell her to go to stop. Like, okay. Do you want to do that by yourself? Would you like me to walk with you? You know, like, and just having that third point makes us not be the nagger, right? Because this is the thing. It's not about me saying it. So oftentimes, you know, there'll be things like that in an environment that you might be supporting that helps with that. And you can support that best by saying like, I've noticed, like if you're in the room, like we love when you ask us questions. Yeah, if you're here to help us and you're asking questions, we're like, thank you, thank you. And so if you're like, I've noticed that I've talked to this child and every time we said something, like he does the complete opposite thing and I don't know what to do. Like, thank you for sharing. Let's walk over together, or whatever they might say, right? And so then we can kind of help with that. But that kind of connects to that talking versus navigating as well. So we talked about encouragement versus praise. Anyone want to share anything more about that we didn't talk about? So we do lots of encouragement, and we're careful about it, right? Like you did it. Like we're not their cheerleader. Sometimes we can be kind of a cheerer or I'm rooting for you person, but we're trying not to be like the sage on the stage again, right? So, they finally made it up to the top of the steps, and that's the first time they've done it, and they're excited, or they're halfway there, and they're like, I need you to hold my hand, or I need, oh, you're feeling like you're not ready to go the rest of the way. You don't have to go the rest of the way. It's okay for you to come back down. Do you want to come back down? I think I want to keep going. So that's encouragement without me like making this big, performance out of it. So I could just give them only what they need. Like we are okay with the coats on upside down and the hood down here. It's okay. We're okay with shoes on, the opposite feet. First of all, most shoes, they don't even tell anymore because they're not even made to be on either feet. Yeah, they're just rounded. They might have a tiny bit, right? Yeah. Right, and for some children, it can throw them off. And so helping them to know, and that's that first period. For a young child, they don't get that yet, and there's no feedback that they're getting from the shoes to tell them, and so we don't hear. But eventually, they start recognizing it, or they'll start asking, and that's when we know they're ready for that lesson. And we can say, oh, yes, so. And we're going to say, like, I noticed that you're walking differently. Does something feel different? And they're like, and they'll start changing their shoe on the other foot. You're like, how does that feel? Better. Off they go, right? But if we don't tell them the thing, the sticker or the buckle or, this part's over here and, this is called the outside of your body or whatever we're going to give them as the lesson for that, for sure. Validating versus hearing. This is probably, it's all through the building. I think it works a lot in the teams program too. Any thoughts on that? Yeah.
I've practiced this a lot because I practice listening.
Right.
That's a good. Great.
Yeah, but that's a good way to think of it.
I heard you say you didn't want peas or something, have another vegetable or whatever.
Right.
Just like, and then if you repeat it back to them and it's wrong, they're like, no, I do want peas, I don't want peas.
Yeah. But you're right. Sometimes we have to turn that manual switch on.
Yes.
Because we're like, oh my gosh, I've gotten 3 vegetables out. And you're like, but you weren't listening. You're like, oh, you were saying you did them. Yeah. And so, when we repeat it back, and so when we're doing this whole validating versus just hearing, like sometimes we're saying, like, I hear you. And if I'm just trying to get them to calm down, that might be all I need to say. I'm hearing you. And sometimes they need those extra pieces. And we've seen that by, once their shoulders start going down, have you noticed that? Your child's kind of worked up, their shoulders are up. And so you'll know how many more things you might need to say based on where their shoulders go. And so if you say, I hear you. You were saying you're mad. You thought we were going to park tonight when I said we were going to park this weekend. I would be mad. I hear you. And then their shoulders are going down. They're saying, it is bedtime. What can we do right now that can help? We might pull, we might say, can we do some somersaults here? Would that help? Can we get the big mat out? How about if we get the little one? Like it's 8 o'clock, we were supposed to be in bed by 7:20, whatever. So we're trying to help. Do you want to add anything to that?
The active listening. I think it's always, if someone's talking to you, it's just also validating that you heard, like they know that you heard what they said. And if you heard it wrong, then they're going to correct you. I think that's really just being present.
Some of you in this room, might felt like, or even said to your children, you know, you call her Mrs. Tracy because we use that in front of the name. And if that is your values, we're not here to take it from you, but we do just go by our first name. And we believe in mutual respect, right? Like, I do not think when a child calls me Barbara, that is less than. Now, if a child called me Mrs. Fondren with an attitude, that would be less than, right? You know, so I'm balancing all that out. I'm giving feedback to a young person. You are angry and you can be angry. I'm not okay with you calling me stupid. Now, if somebody's looping, I'm not even having that conversation with them right now. And so that doesn't mean that I'm also not expecting a level of respect, but I'm waiting for this human to be able to get to that place where we can have that conversation, right? But for some of you, you'll notice when you're in the room and you see someone, maybe, I mean, I don't know that everyone in the room knows this, but there's a lot of need in the world right now. And we've seen, you're like, yep. And we've seen more dysregulation, not just from children, from adults. I mean, we know this, right? You can see this in the world. And children are feeling it, you know? And I mean, we've not changed everything we've done. We have put more support, more lenses, more options, things that I would have never suggested 5 years ago, fidgets, and, you know, like, we've put those things in play in lots of different ways because there is such a need. And not just here, everywhere. Every one of my colleagues, everyone's saying the same thing, right? And so you come into the room and you hear someone say, stupid bud, to your child, and you're standing right here. And you're like, okay, this is the kid. I bet this is the one, you know, like, we can feel that, right? And it may not even have been said to your child, but you're feeling as if they're being unkind to you, and that kind of feeling, you know, of the way you grew up, or I'm not going to be my dad, or whatever that was, comes back. And so we really work, like, we don't demand respect from people. The first thing we do is build trust. And it will take you a dozen times in the same studio. What do you think? Depends on the kiddo. But, you know, it could take that long, and for some of you that's been here subbing, you know, like, it could take a minute until you can build that trust with those other humans, right? And so, and then once you do, you know, instead of saying you hurt my feelings, which we try to not take it personally, right? Instead, we would say, like, I'm not sure that's an agreement in our community. And how did that just make you feel just then, right? Between that hurt my feelings, if you were a young child and hearing that, versus, I don't think that's an agreement in our community. Yeah.
It felt kind of like the person said the university,
Yeah.
my feelings, and being a part of the community is me. It's not what we do together.
And there's just a nuanced change there, but it makes so much difference. And that does not mean that I'm perfect at that all the time either, you know, like sometimes, well, I've you know, had some young people press my button before, and I'll be like, I need to go check on the dogs. I will be back in just a minute. I'll switch out with somebody else, right? I can tell that this is not, I'm not in a prepared human space to be able to have this conversation successfully. And, you know, I want to help them to feel like they're also respected. You know, I don't know what happened for them this morning. I don't know if, you know, young person supporting yesterday or one day this week that wasn't sure how they were going to get home because their family lost the internet, and the internet's the way they use the phone, and they don't know where they're living right now because they're under relatives. You know, like, there are lots of things going on for lots of people that we will never know anything about. And sometimes we get a window into that, and sometimes we don't. So we might as well assume that they're doing the best they can, you know, and then we'll support that from there. Thoughts, comments about any of that? So that was that whole gain respect versus demanding respect. That doesn't mean that you need to be okay if you feel like you're struggling with something that's happening. Please come to whoever the adult is in the room and say, like, I don't know what to do. You know, like, this is what's happening. And it seems like it's not happening until you just went to the bathroom and now I don't know what to do. You know, like, okay, I can help with that, right? And that's okay. That means that child's intellectual abilities are growing when they're doing that, right? Because they're recognizing that somebody left and I can kind of maybe do something and take advantage. Now we need to help them to do that differently, but that's going to take a minute to do as well. Social ground rules versus normative culture. So I'm going to give a first period lesson on this because it's kind of tricky, but every studio has a series of social ground rules, things that they've agreed on. They go under one of the three areas: respect for self, respect for environment, respect for others. And so then they create like what their community agrees to, and it's posted somewhere in the room. And that's wonderful. And sometimes it happens so beautifully, and the children come up with these great ideas, and everything's perfect. And then all of a sudden, like something changes, and a child starts bringing in their Apple Watch, and they start calling their family from it. And you look around, and there's like 7 kids with Apple Watches in the 6 to 9 program, and you're like, what? What happened? And it's like we said, we made commitments of this, but then this other thing started happening, and we didn't recognize it until it was already moving forward. For example, you're outside with a group, and you've heard them say that we don't get into the creek, and then you saw some kids get into the creek, and the adult was kind of in the creek with them, and other children thought and you're like, I don't know what the difference is between that. Just ask. Like we will tell you the why, or we'll say like, actually, we made a mistake yesterday, and this child's been looping on it, so we told them they could get in the creek today because we wanted to help them to like finish this thought process so that we could move on. And the other children mostly know that, but thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to tell you. And so most of the time there's a reason for what we do, but if you start to see something that's going outside of what the agreement is of the community, please bring that up for 2 reasons. One, we want to help you to know why, the why behind that, or say like, oh gosh, I didn't even notice that was happening. Let me help that to happen better, And so you're not upsetting us. You're not catching us doing something wrong. We want to know. Sometimes you'll see something better than we do, because if you've been in the building before, there's like lots of things happening at one time. And we will miss, and we'd love to hear it from you. Want to add anything else to that?
No, I mean, we hold each other.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
And which leads to the next one, high, ethical standards for all we do, and say like, I don't carry around this drink with my specialty dragon fruit in it, and drink it in front of kids, unless I know that's something they can have in the studio, right? That stays privately underneath, even in my own space. I kind of put it away so that it doesn't look like we have one set of rules and you all have a different set of rules, right? So we work really hard to do that. And if we tell young people to bring one small dessert, I'm not bringing a big piece of birthday cake, in my lunch, right? So, and so we'll also, it's a hard one, and it's so hard for us because you come in with your coffee that you just got steamed for you down the street, and we go, we can't take that into the studio in the 3 to 6 studio. They're like, oh, and we're like, we hate to tell you that. We're like, you can put it in the media center and you can just go finish it. We'll let them know you'll be done after, or sometimes if you have it in a cup that's covered like this, they'll put it into the closet, and they'll go in the closet, take a swig, and then come back. Don't tell anybody, okay? But you know what I'm saying? We really work hard to try to have us, we ask the children not to sit on the tables, we don't sit on the tables. If we ask them to carry one thing at a time, we don't stuff as much as we can and then carry it. So it's just, we really, and the ethical part, like we also apologize. We do not see ourselves as weakness when we say like, I made a mistake. I jumped to a conclusion. I saw something. I thought it was the whole story. And I understand why you're upset with me. And I'm sorry. We don't just start like, well, I saw you do it the other way. They're like, just to hold for ourselves, make ourselves feel better. Like, gosh, that just ruins the trust relationship for that kid for maybe ever. It doesn't mean that we're perfect, but we really try to like uphold those same pieces. Thoughts, comments about any of that? Too much. I'd love to hear from you. Yeah, we already talked about the questioning in the US many times. We'll move us forward, Tracy. Any thoughts right now from anybody?
I'm just thinking how different society would be and more of a generations, right? Just apologize when people go through that.
That's the biggest way to build trust. What? Building for anyone, right? Just like owning your own stuff. Just
Well,
being
it's pretty
open
long
to
haul
that.
told growing up, whether we all believe growing up, but adults know we're doing.
Right. We don't make mistakes either, right?
I know that's another person in my demographic that's not just trying to figure stuff out.
Right.
I think one of the nicest things when my son came to Montessori came from a parochial school, which was, very much like this. It was very hard for him. And he started coming home saying, it's not perfect, it's not perfect, it's not perfect. I'm like, you see, hearing this. So when he came here, the first thing that they said was, we're going to work on this confidence. And that's probably going to be the whole year. And it really, and I thought, that's how we're going to work on it. Is that it? And it has been amazing. And his confidence has grown, and I watched this little guy who's afraid to make a mistake. He lots of mistakes along with his dad.
And helping others,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, I can show you this.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing. And it's been a lot of this.
Thanks for sharing that. Anybody feel moved?
What is generally known as discipline in traditional schools is not activity, but immobility and silence. It is not discipline, but something that festers inside the child, arousing his rebellious feelings.
Not to offend anybody in the room or any parochial school teachers or anything. But we see this, right? Does anyone have thought about this?
That's why
Are we off track?
Yeah, she went to traditional preschool last year, and the hardcore structure that they were trying to put on a 3-year-old, she fought back so hard, and then she became the problem child to all 4 rooms, and that's, I was not prepared to be there. And she didn't do it with me at home, or soccer or anyone else, so it was, the discipline over and over and over, she was, it didn't help her grow.
Have you ever heard of Indigo Child? That whole thought process, you were saying yes to that. It'd be something that you look up, but that's a thought process with that where, like they just have a bigger way of seeing the world, and they don't want people to tell them what they can and can't do all the time, right? Like they could be reasonable, most of the time, but we try to help with that. So
There's also adults not inflicting their views on an individual child. So indigo is very free spirit.
that's right.
And they see things that adults don't see continuously. We can talk more.
Yeah, I know. It's an interesting thought process.
There were things, and he was adopted, and just to let you know how we're at it. I planted the seed very early on, and he said in the bathtub one night, he said he was maybe 3 to 4-ish, and he said, I know that I did not grow in your belly. And he knew innately that, and we haven't really talked about that, and I was really flipped out about it, but there were some things that he would say, and I'm like, there's no way he would have ever said that, but he said, I know that I grew in my mom. And he knew that it was a real mommy. I think it was an individual pulling that experience. But yeah, just like they have to feel it, and they see things and they feel things.
And they can tell when someone's not being authentic. I mean, most children can anyway, but also some just have a bigger power to do that too. Thank you. But really just trying to, know that sometimes what some of us feel is discipline or good, might also be, coercing that's creating something bigger inside of the child. And for sure, we've seen teens in that situation that they're on their 4th school and they come here and, we just try to give them care and love and, acceptance and then we start the academic part when that time's ready, right? We're not trying to just go right into this is what we're gonna do, and you either do it, now, or you're done, Yeah.
It's hard to learn when you don't feel safe, when you're accepted. And it's also hard to learn when you feel like under pressure.
Yes.
To do something that doesn't feel natural to you. Like for a small child to sit still and stay very quiet and not fidget or not move good. It's a lot of pressure on the child. It makes it very hard for them to learn. And going back to the black and white versus gray as well. Like, there's a lot of different ways to come to one answer in many different aspects of life. And including academics. So allowing them to have that space and freedom to figure that out and explore that as well.
Requires a shift in mindset. We're not trying to fix the behavior.
Yeah.
And then, I can kind of teach. And in a traditional setting, especially in the time, it's what you're being told that kids need to do. So
Absolutely.
right. So it's a shift in mindset. You're not trying to fix the behavior. You need to first figure out what's actually going on and what does this child need. So I think in traditional schools, there's also learning time and resources. So teachers get, you do this, you consider this. Whereas if you completely shift your mindset, you've got to look at, why is this child acting this way?
Yep.
There's always a reason for what they're doing. They're not just doing.
And when we're not in survival mode,
Yeah.
right? Like we can get to those places and maybe start that process, right? But other times, that I'm taking away your recess works for a certain percentage, right? They're going to change. Not even for the percentage anymore, huh? Yeah. It just holds it off for a minute.
I feel like that applies to any restrictive boundaries in general, even if you're in learning processes, especially with more older generations that raised some of us that have much older parents, and it was, these are the rules, this is what you're going to do. And for me, that taught me this is how you behave in front of them, but when they're not around, I do it over. If you don't see me, you don't know. And it also teaches you how to be speaking. Instead of having conversations, exploring the language, and then learning together that consequences of those things.
Kind of echo that I remember when I was in high school, one of my friends' friends was told, you can't think like that. She immediately went. It's like, just tell someone not to do something because they don't want to do that.
I think labeling something is like using discipline or whatever. I went to Catholic schools my whole life, and it makes it really easy to internalize. If you get punished for something, it makes it really easy to internalize that it's like, I am bad. I didn't do something that wasn't great for the moment. And we deal with that with our child pretty often, because she'll say something. We usually don't even bring it up, and she'll say, "I'm just a bad kid," and it's like, no, not
where does this come from?
yeah, exactly. And I think it's just it's easy. It was really easy for me as a child to internalize it, so I imagine it probably is for her as well. But yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Thank you.
Once you look at the kids, huge things happen between kids and nurses and other stuff. I had a student first day of school said, "You're not even able to join training." Come along with me, don't have a conversation.
Yeah.
He ended up being like we made big progress. He was the first guy, but we made progress for where we started.
Right. Yeah, that's so cool. Maybe that.
Let's talk and share
Demystifying exceptional learners. Sometimes, does anyone know what an IEP is? Just to kind of gauge for you. Okay, wow. That has grown a lot over the last 5 or 10 years. There will be exceptional learners in the room. Sometimes the staff can give you information. They've already talked with families, or they have a relationship that, yes, we want to demystify this with you. And sometimes you just won't know, because it could be that a child has been completely regulated, but this is just a day they're not regulated, and you're trying to figure out, are they bullying? Are they angry? Are they, unkind? What's going on with them? And just know, again, that you may not know all the pieces, and you can always ask, we'll share with you what we can, you know, in that process, but we really do oftentimes want to demystify that with you so you don't get, you know, like when this child starts to leave the room, you know, they know that they can go to this place, and I will let you know when it's okay for them to do that, and if you see them otherwise, I need you to tell me, right? Because that was the other thing when I was touring with this person, you're like, there's kids walking around, and you said they don't just leave the room. I'm like, yeah, they all have plans. I mean, you can kind of tell by their body language, you know, they're not like, ha ha ha, you know, they're just like walking to the thing, and then doing the thing, and then coming back, and I mean, it really is pretty amazing at this point of the year, but there are also young people that, you know, again, might be looping on a thought or a process, and, you know, just know that that doesn't make them not a good kid, right? And that we give them just as much care. And that's part of that spiritual preparation of the adult. Like, if you know that part is hard for you, like, do more observing for a while before you choose to, you know, lean in. Say which level might be best for me. These are the things that are easier for me. These are the things that are harder. Tracy will help you with that. You know, it's okay. We're not judging, you know, and if you notice something that feels like it's triggering to you, and maybe it's because, you know, you have neurodivergent humans in your life and you saw someone say something unkind to somebody, right? Or you heard some kids over talking, like, let us know so we can help, because we're not okay with that either, but we're also going to say it in a way that hopefully keeps their dignity intact, because they're also just being human, you know, like, we have overused, I don't even ever use the word bully, but as a culture we've overused it, and we have not put any gray in, and there's so much gray in unkindness, right? And when young people are setting boundaries, and especially if they're not used to setting boundaries, they can be unkind. And if you add to that a neurodivergent human who has so many sensory components that are going after that, and it might come out just really strong and really unkind, you know, like, you can learn, and most of the staff that have, most of the people that have come in and subbed have said, like, it's changed my life. It's changed my relationship with my parents, my children, my spouse, you know, all those people, because you just learn to be more conscious about what you're seeing instead of, like, but we've just learned how to be efficient, you know, we're quickly, like, making decisions all day long. And here, that, like, goes out the door because we are, like, in it for the long run. Thoughts, comments about any of that? Yeah.
I know I myself, I was an elementary education major for a while, and I had kind of those judgments on the kids that would lash out and things. And so now we have guardianship. We just got guardianship of our nephew about a year and a half ago. He is a sexual learner. He came from a very bad background. And being in the home with him and his teacher, Emily, we see person that he is. He is the most amazing learning person in the world, but first couple weeks of school got suspended for things he shouldn't have been doing in school. You know what I mean? But she has gotten him to a point where he is a leader this year, and she is her female. And the first 2 weeks, she was so proud of him. She was just on this track of, you know, and I was one of those people that I'm like, well, this kid's just being a brat, you know, and you really don't know. After, like I said, I've got one in my home, and he is the most amazing person in our house. He helps us take care of a 5-month-old baby and our 5-year-old daughter, and he loves the animals and all of that. But, you know, he came from a rough start. So, you know, you never know. You don't know.
Thanks for sharing that. It's so true.
Yeah, I find that I get more lessons from my son than he probably does for me.
100%.
He's like, I need my peace time. Is what he says to me. But I just love that you guys have safe spaces for when he gets overwhelmed and overstimulated. He knows where to go. He's gardening when he was little, or see the dogs or the fish tank and all those things. It's just life is hard sometimes for littles, and as an adult I can see that. But yeah, it's good. I've learned a lot from him.
Oh yeah, I have too.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, especially for the littles, everything is a brand new experience. I've struggled to learn that over many years. Like, especially the first time I became a mom, my daughter was finally growing up. I had 4 kids, Alice is 13, but when she would start doing things, I'm like, why can't you just use it? Like, it's a normal, simple thing. Just get out your stuff or like grab your spoon. Like in my brain, not to her. But I'm just like, come on, this is a simple task. And it with my own cognitive behavioral therapy that I did, it was like, this is all brand new. They've never done these things. This isn't built into them for the last 20, 30, whatever years.
Thank goodness it's not.
This is something that they might have learned 3 months ago or in the last 2 years. And 2 years isn't long. So it's a matter of patience, and that changes so much. For them. Well,
It's like with emotions too, like when my son was really small, it was hard for me to comprehend. Like he might get upset and start crying when he walks on, and I'm like, oh, we'll just get another one. But for him, that was his first big loss, his first experience with life. So trying to keep in mind that what seems like, oh, we can just replace it, or we can go do this, or we can do this instead. All those emotions were new for him. He had never, lost something and been aware of it. He might have when he was even smaller, but he didn't know. So losing a toy at the store that he took with him, or forgetting something in the car, for him, that was a big deal. I'm like, it's going to be there, it's right there. And then trying to remember, oh, he doesn't understand that. This is his first time losing that, or understanding it's just not there cognitively yet. And trying to remember that, because it's really easy to be like, well, what's wrong? It's not a big deal. And he's like, no, my world is falling apart. You were telling me it's not serious. It's disappointment. Yeah. So
Even disappointment for adults, we don't understand what disappointment is.
Yeah.
Like, so it's something, a word attached to some feelings. I think you think, oh, I think they maybe experience disappointment. Some people don't understand what that is.
They're learning a new thing for the first time.
Yes.
They've never felt these feelings, and that's how maybe they're asking for help, or they're trying to figure it out.
They don't always know all the words to say to tell us how they're feeling, right? We just hear.
at that age, I have a 12-year-old, a 5-year-old, and I have a 5-week-old. So
Wow.
my 12-year-old will get frustrated with my 5-year-old for doing something, and I'm like, just be patient with her. You're getting upset for her doing something that you do all the time, but you don't realize because they're in that same emotional plane right now. Despite the fact that there's such a large age difference, and then my 5-year-old is like, well, why is the baby crying so much? And she's like shushing, and she's trying to get him. She's like, Mommy, like, why? What's wrong with him? He's hungry. He wants to eat. He's hungry right now. And I'm like, calm down. Maybe he's not hungry, but everything's new. He's been here for 5 weeks. He doesn't understand why he's cold, or why you're touching his feet, or why it's so bright, or things like that. And so it's kind of weird seeing having such that age difference and watching them interact with each other and trying to figure out what the other one's up to or why they're doing what they're doing, because my 12-year-old gets so frustrated with his sisters sometimes. But then he's like, oh, I'm like, you have tantrums too. You were right there with her trying to make that shift from, being a teen to an adult, and she's trying to learn how to go from being like a toddler, small child to like a big girl. So she's trying to figure those things out too. You're just not at the same age, but you're in the same shift right now. So just trying to keep reminding him, like, be patient with, and then she's learning to be patient with the baby because she was a baby. And now, watching that. I'm like,
Wow, you've got a front row spot
Yeah.
there. Which leads us right to emotional dysregulation, right? And all of those ups and downs. And when Glenn and I were walking through the building the other day, we were like, and this person remembered them when they were 3. We're like, oh my gosh! Remember they threw their shoes at us every day for like 6 weeks, and now they're just like, hello, and just like they're the top of the. It is just so interesting to watch, and we have to like manually remember, and you maybe remembered your 12-year-old or have forgotten like what they were like when they were 4 or 5, right? And so it doesn't last forever, and sometimes they work through in a different way, and sometimes they get a little bit better for a while, sometimes not, but we really, try to demystify it as they're not being, like you were sharing, bad. They're not being not a good kid. They're just really trying to regulate their emotion of whatever they're feeling or dealing with right now. And then nurturing that inner discipline, right? We do a lot of work with restorative justice, and we want to, oh, go ahead, yeah.
So how do you handle like when a child is like dysregulated and the impact it has on other kids, like when they're saying unkind things and like that has an impact on other kids, like how do you handle that with the other kids?
Yeah, well, in this setting, you know, I mean, of course, there's 1,000 different ways we might do it, but if a young child is becoming so dysregulated, the first thing we're going to do is like look around and see, is it really bothering anybody else? Like sometimes we're like, oh my gosh, they are yelling at top, but everyone's kind of off doing their own thing and no one really cares. So that's one filter that we would use. And then, you know, if, you know, we're like, yeah, you were upset at this person, I'm going to put my body in. Well, no, you know, like we'll just put our body in between them and whoever is that might be the thing that they're focused on right now that they can't get through from that. I was in like the common space trying to move another child back to their studio that had visited the pups, and they just had it and they were just screaming at the top of their lungs. And so I was trying some different, you know, dysregulation strategies and some just, you know, trying to get them onto a different thought process. And then I texted the teacher, like, can you come help? And the teacher was like, oh, you are upset. Tell me what you're upset about. And they were like, I want that. You know, something we hadn't even talked about. And they're like, okay, do you want to take it to the group? Yes. Jumped up, walked, no, no, right? You're like, sometimes that switching out is the best thing we could do. Am I answering what you're saying?
Well, I mean more like when a kid is kind of saying hurtful things to other kids, like how, like obviously that child who's saying those things isn't a bad kid or anything, but sure, how do you, I guess, keep the other kids who are experiencing that, like.
We've got a gnat attacking you right this minute in front of all of us. Sorry, people on. That's right. Oh, man, sorry.
Like how
do you support the other child that's setting boundaries with the child that's dysregulated?
And like how do you teach the emotional regulation for somebody who's feeling like, oh, this kid is kind of attacking me out of nowhere, like I don't understand.
Yeah. It does make sense, absolutely.
It's depending on what you're saying. Like, how do you keep it? We all have like a story we tell in our heads to ourselves about ourselves, about the person we are. So how do you keep, like, how would you your preferred method for taking that child who's feeling hurt or discouraged or receive that stimulus that's making them feel negatively about themselves, kind of altering that story they tell themselves about themselves? How do you keep that from going in a negative light and steering it into a moment where they can kind of self-aware and separate things other people are saying versus how they feel about themselves?
Is that kind of where you were going to? Yeah. And, you know, at first we have to think about, is this child that's dysregulated conscious or unconscious? Right? Like for some of them, they're just literally unconscious and it can go away fleetingly and it's gone to another, so they're not really holding it in that same way. And other times you can tell it's just like, here we go again, even if they don't say that, they feel that big feeling. And so we're doing two things at the same time. First, we're trying to make sure that no one gets hurt by whatever's happening with this. And then eventually there will be a follow-up. If this child's not able to follow up with this other human, then we might follow up and like, wow, your friend was having really big feelings and you looked like you were asking them to go to snack with you. I was just asking to go snack and they threw their lunchbox at me. Oh, did that hurt your body? No, I'm fine. I said, do you want to set a boundary? They seem like they're at a place where you can talk now. You know, so trying to help them to set that boundary. What often happens with really young children is they've moved on, you know, and it doesn't get to that. And then sometimes something triggers it at bath time and they might bring it back up, you know, and you're like, oh, I wonder what happened. And, you know, and so I'll let your teacher know you want to follow back up with that. Send it in, you know. And then we can help them to kind of have a closure on that because we don't always see what someone else might hear at home. But oftentimes that's what we want them to do because there's this great book by Barbara Coloroso, I think it's in your list of books, called The Bully, the Bullied, and the Bystander. But it just talks about all the different roles of that, and we all do all three things, right? And so how do we help this person to feel more agency and strength, you know, in a situation where they feel like they have been hurt or treated unfairly? Does that help? I could talk for hours on something. Did you have follow-up?
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah. She's like, I'm just going with that. I don't even know what else I want to say about this right now.
Well, I mean, it's a kind of topic that obviously there's many
So many
scenarios.
different scenarios, yeah.
I have a small input just because I've dealt with, I think I know what you're trying to say. So you have an exceptional learner and then a child who might not necessarily be an exceptional learner. And there is some type of conflict. How do you explain to this child that this child is an exceptional learner without being derogatory in some type of way? Or like, how do you de-escalate or separate the situation when you have one or the other? And kind of how I handle that, and I'm not an expert in any way, but like, well, you know, you have a set standard of how you're going to let this child deregulate because of an IEP or whatever it may be, and you can communicate with this child and you maybe say, hey, do you want to come and have a conversation with me? Like, they're not able to have a conversation like this right now, but I can recognize that the situation is not okay. Maybe we come back to this later when everybody has calmed down if you want to set a boundary with them. So like, let them know that you recognize that there is a situation, but it's not appropriate to address it at that point with a child that is an exceptional. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like, I just also want to point out, when we talk about emotional dysregulation, that's not necessarily tied to anyone's, exceptionality. Any of us can become emotionally dysregulated at any moment. True that. I appreciate that. And I think that to answer you, what I'm maybe interpreting is, we want all of our learners to feel heard. And so, everyone has needs in that moment, right? And so it's just trying to make sure that everyone's needs get met. And that's what we partner with other, adults. And that, but I really feel like one thing I've taken away just from my own children's description of this environment and being able to be part of those types of, things that happen. They happen, right, in the world, children, adults, everybody, is that they, my own kids say that they see people differently than some of their peers and others because they've been part of those moments and they use them as learning experiences. And so we don't ever want children, or anyone, right, to be hurt by someone else's actions when they were just out of control, right? Their body was out of control. And so just letting them know that they can feel heard as well and like ask them what they need in those moments. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to
Yeah, I feel like Montessori in itself fosters that sense of safety, community, where it may not be said outright, but everyone has different needs and everyone's going to get what they need. Like, go to the doctor with a cut, you're not going to tax, right? Get what you need in the moment. So I think Montessori at its basic foundation does that in itself. You create this safe place. Your principals and the agreements in the classroom and stuff like that. So I feel like it's hard to credit they do that, they get that, but I don't think it necessarily always has to be addressed. Like, oh, this student needs something different from they're having a bad day.
In our own moment, and this slide itself could be a 2-hour workshop just by itself, right? And there probably will be a workshop like this. We usually have some kind of interdiscipline support workshop. But I hope what everyone hears is oftentimes that child that feels like they didn't get to set a boundary, like we don't always know that. And you'll hear that before we do. And so in the partnership, share that with the studio teacher so we could do a follow-up, because that is super important. We may think that everything was all taken care of, and then at bath time, at nighttime, they're like, oh, and you're like, thanks for sharing. Then you're like, hey, by the way, can you follow up with them, and then we can help that to come together.
Conflict resolution.
Say it again.
Conflict resolution.
Yeah.
For guidelines is really important.
Yeah.
We teach that as adults when we're in our careers, but it's a little late by then.
And you're right, yeah.
So we're making
You're really
agreements.
good, really good at it.
Yeah.
They
Making
do.
agreements with other learners.
Right. And it really won't be your task in subbing or volunteering, but you're gonna see it, and sometimes, even though we don't put you in charge, the teacher might go to the restroom for a minute and something happens, and you can just say, let's just hold, I don't know, and let's ask when they get back. Like, that's your wording, you know, or you can say like, I know that you both are upset and I'm not sure what to say right now, but can we hold? I know you were gonna go get a snack, and what did you say you wanted to do? Oh, you wanted to see the dogs. You want me to see if the dogs are available? You know, like we try not to distract, but sometimes you have to use that, especially when you're by yourself. And that's all you need to know for this part of that, and then we'll help you with the rest. We also ask, you know, like, do you see all of these beautiful things the teachers have made? Like, it does not look like that at the end of the day. And there are always pencils to be sharpened and things, and so if you're subbing, we ask if you're able to please come 20 minutes before, stay 15 minutes after, so that you can help get this together for them again. The children all have roles and responsibilities. You're like, oh, I thought the children cleaned the room. Yes, and. Right? Like, yes, they do, and there's usually more support that needs to happen. And you might be like, I just want to volunteer. Please, because all of them will take you for one day a week just helping to make these things beautiful, because it's a lot of work. They're creating the materials, they're planning lessons, and they're trying to keep this looking like this when children walk in the door.
It is shocking how grateful the educators are just because you vacuum.
It's true.
You take 10 minutes at the end of the day to vacuum and you were there for your work.
That's true. What did you say, Gabe? No, it's your favorite part. So Gabe's going to be the vacuumer of the building. That's right. What did someone else say?
I said when you find the little building views everywhere.
Yes, yeah. And try not to suck them up, you know, to actually, yeah. So yes, if you can't sub, but you want to volunteer, and you're like, I have the first Monday of the month, like come do some vacuuming or dust some shelves, they would love it. Keep going to the next one there. These are the start times for the different age levels, and you know, you'd be like, what do I do with my child? Well, it depends, you know, like we will want to help you. If you can put them in extended learning, we will. If your child is going to be like melting down, if they go to extended learning because they've never been, don't do that. You know, like tell us that you'll be there 10 minutes late, it's okay. You know, but we, you know, when you can do this other thing, like we want to help you to be there during that full time for them. And so that's great. If you want to volunteer, you might just want to come in just at the end of the day or just the beginning. This is what their day looks like, so you know those times.
And these are the contract times, so this does allow for that, getting there early and staying active.
Yep. And so I think we've talked about this a lot, but you know, when a child comes in and they want to do the 9 chain, and somebody was swinging the 9 chain like a lasso earlier this week, and it's missing 6 bars, they can't do the 9 chain, right? Now it's no longer the long 9 chain. They can't do the cubes, they can't do the root of, they can't do any of those parts because it's not all put together. And so even if you want to volunteer, you're like, is there anything I can take home? They're like, yes. Do you know anything about pliers? Can you fix a 9 chain, right? You know, like, tell them what your skills are. They would love to help you to send something home that you can cut up, like, not the 9 chain, but, you know, something else that they might be doing. And so you could help do things in other ways. They're like, I'm looking for fava beans. I'm like, great, I'm on it. I'll get you some fava beans, right? Like, those things are super important.
Is it intimidating to anybody else that, like, I couldn't tell you how to do a lot of those things?
Oh, yeah. Me neither. I couldn't have either, yeah.
I want to learn those.
I know. And to see like something like the binomial cube being used in algebra down here, and it starts in the 3 to 6 environment down there, right? And it's a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? That's what you used? Oh, sorry, say it again. What is it?
It's ax squared plus
See, look at that. See, thank you, algebra woman. Yeah.
One of my favorite things is when a kid will come up to me and be like, I want to do this thing, and I don't know how to do it. So I get to say, great, will you show me how to do that? Because they love showing you what they can do.
What'd you say?
I said, I believe they love correcting you.
Yeah.
They do.
There's been a couple times where
purposely done something wrong in front of my kids that they like, oh, can you just do it? I think you need help, brother. I think you are capable of doing it. Let's just try. You can't do it. And so I'll purposely do whatever it is wrong for that first time. I'm like, oh man, just stop, I'll do it.
Oh.
Okay, you got it.
Having some fun with that, absolutely. This is the basic schedule, like even the teens, the high school age level, goes outside. They have what's called renewal time. And so, these are kind of the things that happen during the day. And so you could be like, when is my lunch? You might be like, I like my lunch and I want to know before the day starts, like ask for what you need. Or if you're coming in to help at lunch, sometimes we just have volunteers that just come in a couple of times a week to just help at lunch, and please, that's wonderful. The next thing that happens after this is you're like, okay, I'm ready. And you're like, Tracy, I would like to be in the 6 to 9 year olds or the 14-year-olds and 14 to 18-year-olds. And so she will set up a time for you to come and just spend the day. And I know that feels like, oh my gosh, that is so much time, but you really will love to see the whole thing before you come in. And, if there's not something going on, we'll move you around, into something else. But Tracy is your person. And then they'll say like, okay, Tessa's available now in the 6 to 9 program. And then we start feeding you in to sub. And then you're like, I can be available these 2 days. And once you get into a studio and they get to know you, they'll start requesting you specifically. And so we really appreciate, whenever you can do that, because then it leaves an amount of consistency. We had to close 3 studios this week because there was so much illness, and we don't really have subs yet available as much in the building. And so, and when there's 2 teachers out, I'm not doing that to the whole program and moving everybody around. Now everybody's off for the whole day, so hopefully we're almost through this illness of everybody coming back to school and things will start settling down. But we really want to have consistent, available, and the more that people are in the same studio, the better that studio will run for the day. Because especially those kiddos that might be more emotionally dysregulated or might be neurodivergent or sensory sensitive or whatever their needs are, like it's harder when there's like someone they've never seen before. So we really appreciate if you could come in frequently.
Do you have parents know if there's a soda room so that if our kid acts off,
like I'm in a perfect world, yeah, I'm sure that would happen. But I know that sometimes studios will do that. Like, just so you know, I'm out tomorrow, and I know I'm your person, your child's person. And so if you know that might be an issue, say if you can remember to let me know, parent square me, so I can know and I can either prepare my child or I can have them do an absence waiver today. Yeah, absolutely, all those things. Yep. So a lot of these things we talked about, prepare and break down the room, come in with an open mind, be aware of your own manner, keeping children and teens safe, really that is your number one thing. And one of the things we talk to staff and subs about is just keeping your back towards the wall so you can kind of see the whole room, and so if you're not sure what to do, stand against the wall so you can kind of see everybody. If you don't know sign language, but you want to know more, we can send you a link. Audra Morgan, Audra Bassett, they're sisters. Audra created a whole litany of different sign language that's used throughout the building. So if it's just like lower your voice, or can you go back and walk, or can you come here and sit, or whatever the situation is. And so like, I want to have some of those things to be able to use. Like, we can share that with you. So let us know. Have a working understanding of the adult commitments, what you got, and there's different things like lessons that they can show you. So if you're a person, you're like, I don't mind like being the up person and helping out, but I'm also like would love to work with the children. So if I can do this, we have some adults that just come in and play a game called I Spy, or just some language games with children, just to help that continued sequence of learning that a group of children might be doing. Yeah, so it's continuing a lot of these things that we talked about, collaborating instead of correcting, indirect support to nurture their independence. So if a child's really struggling with putting their jacket on instead of just doing it for them. Have you learned about the flip trick? I know how to do the flip trick. Have you show me? Because I can't remember how to do the flip check, right? Like giving them the things that helps them do it by themselves. Communicate any concerns with the teachers, you know, like we love to hear that from you for sure. There's the next steps we talked about. All right, we're ready for your tough questions now. Tracy's going to take all of these. Yeah.
As a sub or volunteer, would you be member into a different room? And so we need to list our students and studios out of them.
Yeah, so volunteering and subbing, a little bit of a different scenario. So sometimes your studio will ask for volunteers, or we'll have special things where adults are encouraged to come in or to do things. But typically, I will say that I won't place you in your studio unless it's a dire emergency.
Well, unless you're ready for it, you and your child are ready for it.
Right. So it just what we've seen overall, it just can be, you know, just going to be distracting for them, for you, and so yeah. So I would try not to do that.
You've subbed some with your child now, haven't you?
I have.
I was like, so yeah, you've been
So
doing that
sometimes
for a
you get
long
to the point,
time. Yeah, exactly.
where you can do
Corbin
that.
and I do really well
Yeah.
with it, but if I'm in desert, then it's a little bit different. She's like,
Right.
Depends on your child as
Yeah,
well,
that's right. So just tell us, you know, like, I've been doing this for a while. My child really wants me to be able to come in. Like, why don't you just start with having lunch in there as the studio? And the studio really does decide who comes in, you know, like, and that's not personal. It's just about consistency. And if they have, they're trying to do something specific for their studio, they might be like, we're not having new subs right now, you know, and so thank you, but we'll let you know when we're ready for some new ones. Yes.
Those of us that came in late, can we get a copy of the paper?
You won't be able to get one now. Thank you. Yes, we have more. We have here.
They're around. I've got a set right here. I think there were some.
So we'll stick around if you have anything else.
Yeah, it's hard.
So there will be a video that populates tomorrow. So you'll see that in one of your parent square messages. So if you have us